I never thought coming home from deployment would turn into the most insane 24 hours of my life. I'd been overseas for 8 months, expecting to be away for another 4, when I got the call. My grandmother had suffered a stroke, and as the only leave-flying relative, I had to catch the first flight back to Fort Braxton. That 15-hour flight felt like an eternity, but absolutely nothing could prepare me for what I was about to walk into. My house on Cedar Point Drive, that small, modest 3-bedroom ranch, had always been my sanctuary. I'd saved up for it during my 6 years in the Army, working double shifts, cutting back on everything. Finally, at 28, I'd achieved the American dream of homeownership. The house meant everything to me. It wasn't just a place. It was my stability, my escape after years of bouncing around foster homes. I wanted to return to it, to feel that peace again. When the Uber pulled up outside, something felt off. There was a pink Chrysler Pacifica in the driveway one I'd never seen before. My front lawn, which I had kept pristine, looked like it hadn't been mowed in weeks. The flower beds, the ones my grandmother had lovingly helped me plant, were overtaken with weeds. And toys, scattered all over the porch. A plastic truck, some action figures, a deflated pool float. I paid the driver and grabbed my duffel bag. It felt heavier than usual, the weight of the long journey now symbolizing something I wasn't ready for. I fumbled with the house keys as I approached the front door. As I unlocked it, I heard something that made my blood run cold: children's laughter, the unmistakable sound of a TV blaring cartoons. My first thought was that someone had broken in. But then I thought, maybe my property management company had made a mistake. I had hired Piedmont Property Services to keep an eye on the place while I was gone. Monthly check-ins, lawn maintenance, mail forwarding. For $300 a month, they were supposed to take care of it all. I turned the key slowly, praying it was some sort of mistake. But when I stepped inside, it felt like I had walked into another reality. My leave-flying room was completely transformed. My black leather sectional was gone, replaced by a floral print couch that looked like it belonged in a yard sale. My 65-inch Samsung TV? Gone, replaced with some ancient flat-screen TV that belonged in a museum. And the walls that I had painted gray? Now covered with family photos of people I didn't recognize. But the most shocking thing? The woman sitting on my couch, or rather, what used to be my couch. She was a blonde woman in her 40s, wearing a faded pink tracksuit, feeding a toddler in a high chair. Next to her was a boy, maybe 10 years old, playing a video game with the volume cranked up way too loud. "Excuse me," I said, barely above a whisper, as my mind tried to process the chaos in front of me. "What are you doing in my house?" She looked up, barely fazed, and scoffed. "Your house? Honey, this is my house. I've been leave-flying here for 6 months." The audacity of her response hit me like a punch to the gut. I stood there in my Army combat uniform, duffel bag still slung over my shoulder, staring at this woman who was claiming ownership of the house I had worked so hard to buy. The boy barely glanced up from his game, sizing me up like I was some random stranger, and then going back to his screen as if men in military uniforms walked into their leave-flying rooms every day. "Ma'am, I think there's been some kind of mistake," I said, trying to remain calm. "This is my house. I own this property. I've been deployed overseas and just got back today." She laughed, actually laughed, like I was the one who had lost my mind. "Listen, sweetie, I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to leave right now before I call the police." That's when I saw something that made my stomach drop. On the coffee table was a stack of mail. My mail. Bills, bank statements, letters addressed to one cardinalii, all opened. Not just opened, but sorted. Someone had been going through it. "That's my mail," I said, pointing at the pile. "Those are my bills, my bank statements." Her voice rose, shrill and defensive. "That mail belongs to the previous tenant, some deadbeat who abandoned this place months ago. The landlord told me all about him, didn't pay rent, left the place a mess. Probably off doing drugs somewhere." The words hit me like a slap to the face. The previous tenant? Landlord? Something didn't add up. I pulled out my phone, opened my photos, and scrolled to the screenshots of my mortgage documents, homeowner's insurance, and property deed. "Ma'am, look at this," I said, showing her my phone. "This is my house. I've been making mortgage payments for 2 years. I have the deed right here." She glanced at my phone with the same dismissive look I'd get from a telemarketer. Anyone can fake documents these days. Probably got those off the internet. I stood there, stunned, trying to process her denial. And then she called out to the boy, "Brandon, go to your room while I deal with this." Brandon, the 10-year-old in the Spider-Man shirt, groaned and reluctantly left the room, muttering something about never getting to see the good stuff. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly under my breath. This wasn't a movie, but it sure felt like one. I looked around, really looked around. It wasn't just the furniture that had been swapped out. It was like someone had moved in and tried to erase every trace of my existence. My bookshelves where I kept military manuals, college textbooks, and my collection of science fiction novels were now lined with romance novels, self-help books, and an entire shelf of books on essential oils. My framed photos, pictures of my grandmother, my army buddies, my graduation from basic training gone. In their place, family photos of her, her kids, and what I assumed was her extended family. It was like walking into someone else's life, except it was happening in the house I'd literally bled, sweated, and saved for. "Mom, what's your name?" I asked, pulling out my phone to document this madness. "Don't you dare take pictures in my house," she shrieked, lunging toward me with surprising speed. "I'm calling the police right now. This is breaking and entering." "My name is Juan Cardinale," I said, holding my hands up in a peaceful gesture. "And this is my house. I can prove it. I have documentation. I have witnesses." Then, her face flickered. Recognition? Fear? Either way, I knew she was getting nervous. "You're the one who's been sending those threatening letters." "Threatening letters?" I said, trying to stay calm. "What are you talking about?" "The ones demanding money, saying you're going to take my house away, trying to scare me and my children. You people are all the same." Her voice was getting higher, and that's when it hit meth casual racism. "You people," I repeated slowly, my voice deadly calm. "Don't try to twist my words." She stammered, trying to backtrack. "I know exactly what you're doing. You're probably some kind of scammer, trying to intimidate me and my children." I didn't even flinch. "I'm a soldier. I've served my country, and I'm standing here in my own home. So you can either leave, or we can wait for the police. Your call." And that's exactly what happened. The police arrived, and for the next several hours, it was a whirlwind of confusion, revelations, and let's be honest, betrayal. I wasn't just fighting to get my house back. I was fighting to prove my identity, my worth, and my right to exist in the space I had worked so hard for. But as the police and I pieced everything together, we realized that the woman I was dealing with wasn't the only victim. Robert Steinberg, the so-called landlord, had been running a scam targeting military families just like mine. He'd used his position as a property manager to rent out homes illegally, collect rent, and, most horrifyingly, use racial fear-mongering to manipulate people into believing that if I came back, I was the criminal. But here's where it gets satisfying. As Steinberg's empire of lies began to crumble, so did the false reality Cassandra had created. She wasn't the bad guy here, she was a pawn in a much larger game. And while the damage to my life couldn't be undone, I was determined to make sure Steinberg never pulled this on another family again. So, what would you have done in my shoes? Would you have let the situation slide? Or would you have fought back, even when the odds were against you? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I am curious to know how others would have handled this.